However, we have the king of annoyance.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you may know or may not know, the name of your servant, which is me, in this case, pops up more and more recently, whether it is online or offline. I'm very happy with that because it shows that our work has an impact, which it should, because there is nothing simpler than reconstructing the historical metronome marks. 2 functional brain cells is enough to make you aware of the fact that there is something really wrong in the way we try to read historical metronome marks in this so-called single beat reading. You take 1 tick for the note value and the metronome mark. You take just 2 ticks, like a pendulum. Anyways, you don't need to be a genius. You don't need evidence. The metronome marks itself are serving as circumstantial evidence. But it's a message that apparently it's not easy to digest for many. Now, someone sent this to me, another channel by a certain Dave Hurwitz. He owns a channel, The Ultimate Classical Music, Music Guide by Dave Hurwitz. And, you know, my work was mentioned in connection to Maximiano Cobra, which is a conductor. Many of you will have heard this guy or know this guy. He made some recordings, quite a lot of recordings, and I would say it's not completely whole beat as we advocate here on this channel. It's an attempt, a first attempt to go slower, and in many instances he takes the tempo, or his goal is to take the tempo in a whole beat way. Not everywhere. He's still like in this Talsma aftermath, where you have the variable use of the metronome and things like that, like slow movements, he takes a little bit faster and whatever. But overall, you like the recordings or you don't like the recordings, you like the way the orchestra plays or you don't like the way the orchestra plays, but this is a guy who experimented with the music of that time, using his functional brain to say like, hey, what this Mr. Talsma says makes sense, let's just try it out. And he just got an orchestra and just tried it out. I mean, how cool is that? With all the criticisms you can have, I don't care, this is a great attempt. So in the list of the 12 most annoying conductors ever, ! Dave also, not of course, but felt the need to include Mr. Cobra and acted as if Cobra was inspired by my work. But I have to tell you, the moment that Cobra started his recordings, I wasn't even near opening a YouTube channel, though that doesn't make any sense, but it's not the biggest point of this video. Before we're going to listen to that, I will break the excerpt, of course, later, and I will have some cool sources for you. There is no easier way than to correct people that act from an arrogance, like an arrogance I sometimes think to cover up their lack of knowledge. They mock the persons they want to talk about. They make a fool of me. Whatever they do, it's just to dehumanizing the discussion. Of course, because if you want to have a debate or a conversation, hey, I have a website. There's a contact page. You can send me an email. I will reply to you and we can have a discussion. I won't mind doing that online. But no, these people go behind the camera and they say, you will hear what he has to say, but don't go into the topics. Never. And there are only 2 reasons why they don't. Either they're completely incompetent to do that, which in this case is clearly the case, or they know that what we're talking about has some merits and it's not so easy to debunk that. Let's just listen what he has to say about Cobra and about your servant. Here we go.
However, we have the king of annoyance. And some of you have mentioned him. Actually, it's Maximiano Cobra. Who is Maximiano Cobra, you might ask? Well, he first popped up, oh God, I guess about 20 years ago, maybe a little bit more. He's Brazilian, sort of. And you can look at his website where he's billed as a film producer, writer, playwright, conductor, composer. He's one of those. He's in the Theodore Karensis League. We're kind of back to where we started a little bit. But Cobra is one of the double beat people. What are the double beat people? Well, the double beat thing is a theory by this guy. I think his name is Wim Winters or something like that. He's Dutch. I think maybe he's Dutch. I don't know. He's from another planet. Doesn't really matter.
It's called Europe, Dave.
And they came up with this idea that metronomes in Beethoven's day actually are all moving at double tempo. So we should play the music that one beat is actually a back and forth, not just a tick. It's a tick-tock. And so we should be playing everything at half speed, because that's the actual tempo it was really performed at back in the day. This ignores all of the evidence we have to the contrary. When we have timings for things, we know. And never mind the actual unbroken tradition of performance, which shows no evidence that things were speeding up unnaturally since the time at which they were written. I mean, we know some of these pieces and how long they took and what was going on, and it's all just crap.
I love how these people say, "We know, we here, we know." I'm not going into details, but we know, right? You and I, we know. Anyways, let's continue.
Nonsense, and has made, and they're on YouTube, piles of performances of symphonies by Mozart and Beethoven and Brahms. Would you like to hear the first movement of Brahms' third take 24 minutes instead of the usual?
Would you look at that? I mean, 24 minutes of Brahms, who can... I mean, that's like unbearable, right?
10 or 11 with exposition repeat? Well, there's your chance. I mean, it is... I remember seeing one of the videos. He was doing a symphony. He's doing a symphony, and he had this orchestra that he hired for the occasion. And I've never seen a more unhappy group of people. I remember seeing a horn player. He's like conducting at this glacial tempo, and this guy's sitting there like this, just going like this.
Oh, would you look at that? I remember seeing one of his videos where the orchestra was actually very happy and they were sitting there and the horn player was excited because finally he could breathe, right? It's not like in the Fifth Symphony he had to do like he actually could play the notes, right? But I mean, Dave, show it to us, right? Words are easy.
Okay, I'm getting paid. I mean, it's hilarious. It's a party record. And a lot of these things are, these people, these annoying people put out party records.
Oh yeah, we are annoying people. So let's continue dehumanizing the discussion so that you actually don't need to go into the details, right?
And they're fun for a party, but life is not a party every day. You want long-term lasting pleasure, and you want a good return on your economic investment musically, don't you? And so, ultimately these people are just what I say they are, not worth the investment, other than very, very selectively or for particular purposes. But Cobra is probably the king of the musical fraudsters and annoying.
The king of the musical fraudsters. Ugh. Why? We made a video last week on Jordi Savall. I mean, there you have someone who makes a claim like, hey, all the Beethoven recordings I heard, I was shocked because nobody pays attention to his tempo indications, right? And they're perfect. Just practice a little bit more. And then we checked just the Ninth Symphony and just 4 or 5 spots, where he makes so many compromises to the tempo, like everybody else does. Well, if that isn't a fraud, I mean, that's a strong word. I wouldn't use that. But why is someone who is experimenting with a new idea is a musical fraud? I mean, these people make me just...
And self-promoting and
Oh, that's so bad. Self-promotion. Really, as an artist, really, you should suffer and starve to death from hunger, like earning money with the music you make. I mean, also for me, like, when does this selling his CDs? Oh, wow. Well, that's called modern. And also, that reminds me to C.P. Bach, who did the same thing. So if I'm, in that sense, like a sellout to myself, I'm a good company.
Absolutely. And you just wonder, I mean, he's so oblivious to to how music should sound, what makes it sound well.
That's your taste, Dave. And if I see the collection behind your back, I mean, I think you have listened to some recordings, and if you listen 50 million times to the same way of playing, guess what? Not blaming you for liking something, but don't say that you have like a monopoly on good taste, right?
Either he's totally, completely, absolutely cynical.
Yeah, because your taste doesn't align with my taste. Well, I've news for you. If you want to play a composition of a composer who died like 200 years ago, well, you might want to consider not to have you led by your taste only, right? There is a microscopically small chance that 200 years ago they had a kind of different taste, right? On food, the way they lived, the way they smelled, probably as well, the way they talked. But no. Beethoven's musical taste is just mine. Of course it is. Of course. Everybody who claims something else is from another planet. It's called Europe.
Or he should be committed. I don't know what else to say.
Could be, right? That he takes his job seriously. Hey, I'm a musician. There's a score. I should figure out how that score should be played and the idea of the composer. How crazy of a thought is that?
Say about it, really. Of course, these are all just my considered opinions, but considered after a lot of listening, and I think
a lot of listening. You just said that you listened once to a video of him.
I've provided a rationale why these folk deserve to be on the list of the 12 most annoying conductors ever.
Thank you. If I would make a list of the 12 most annoying YouTubers, you would be on that list. So where do I even start? These guys make me just so tired, you know. I don't know what I need to do with guys like that. I mean, some people say to me, Wim, you're wasting your time here on YouTube. I'm not wasting my time on YouTube. I'm doing it for you. Because the majority of people that respond to my videos are positive, and I really appreciate that. And I know also from the mails that I get, and no, I'm not going to share that with you. Dave, if you say, oh, where are you? No, you just have to believe me. People send me mails and they say like, thank you because you changed my life. And I can imagine that it's true. It's not because, again, I am such a genius or a hero. No, I'm just, I mean, whatever, you know my story. They do make the difference, because if you play music, if you put a score on your piano, just try that, Dave. I don't know if you play the piano, but just try it. Then, you know what? It makes a difference if you wake up in the morning and say like, okay, I can play that Mozart sonata in a way that is supposed to be played. And I don't have to be frustrated forever for not being able to reach a tempo that these top virtuosos claim that it should be played in. But Cobra, guys, I don't mention the guy often. Really, he deserves all the admiration just because of starting to experiment and practice, putting his mouth where his words are, or vice versa. I don't never know how this saying is, but you know what I mean. Like, just think, hey, it's all possible, you know, Wim Winters is just a fraud, and you know what is this half-beat theory like? Well, what? He just said like, there is something wrong, let's try. Am I fond of all the recordings? Maybe not. And how could that be possible? An orchestra, you would have to re-educate the players, string players, every orchestra member. They're not trained in this way. They're not trained to hold long notes. They're trained to just play very fast, have these attacks. And so an orchestra needs to be, you need to retrain yourself. Like hold a note 10 seconds long with one pure pitch. Just try that if you play the cello or the violin. That's hard. As a singer as well. That's why we worked with singers that actually, Erik van Nevel and his ensemble, are like experienced in Renaissance music. They're the best because they can hold a note forever with no vibrato, and the pitch will be perfect. It's unbelievable. So, but Cobra, I mean, the Ninth Symphony, just listen to his recording. It's not all in whole beat, by the way. But the fast movements are more or less like in Holbein. The slow movements, he's still playing in that Talsma tempo, as I told you at the beginning. But just, we made that video on Saval 1 or 2 weeks ago. Just listen to, at the end, I'm sharing a fragment, like at the end of the Ninth Symphony, where it's just like carnival music. It's like, why is no one standing up, either in the orchestra or in the production room or wherever, and saying like, Mr. Saval, this doesn't make any sense. This is just, this, whatever. Probably, Dave would make a video on Saval as well and say like, yeah, he's an annoying composer because he thinks that the original works are actually seriously, really. I have news for you, Dave. There were actually, this guy, Beethoven himself, 3 months before he died, he wrote to his publisher, wait for my metronome marks. The world needs them. He actually said that the success of the Ninth Symphony in Berlin, in which Mendelssohn actually was in the choir, how cool is that, was a success because his metronome marks. So I don't care what you think. I'm not interested. I do care what Beethoven wanted. And so to just say these things about Cobra, it's just so unjust. Just listen here to the finale of the Ninth Symphony. And this makes sense. Even with this orchestra that's sitting there like, oh, I'm paid, so I'm playing. No, you know what's cool in the Ninth Symphony when you listen to this recording? It's what is true. You can see that the orchestra is a little confused by times. How could it be different? How could it be different? It's a major shift. But there are moments in that recording where you see the musicians just like the music is just taking over. The music is there. And you can say like, okay, if I would be there, I mean, I don't know if we would do it better. I have no experience in conducting, but like I would work on accentuation and like expression marks, like things like that. That's the key of understanding playing in Holbein, is accentuation. That's actually the access door to make it work. But you see in that video that the music sometimes just is so powerful that the fire is coming into the group. And here's the end. Just listen and compare that to the other recording we shared recently. This makes sense. This is like very fast, right? If you've never heard the symphony before, then you will be shocked because this is also prestissimo. Like it's the end, it's the finale. That's the excitement. What Gardner, what Saval, what Hedwig, all the conductors do, like it doesn't make any sense. So Dave, use your ears and change your musical taste. If you don't like this, it's because it's not fast enough, because the musicians fall asleep because of then get a life. And try to find some other music. I mean, we have to call a spade, right? Right. Okay, let's not waste any time to the discussion on that. But we have so much evidence that this must not be true, This cannot be true. And I always like these laughs, That's like they give so much away. If you had the facts in your hand, you would just give them to the world. No, you have to make it like with a little bit of this like mockery. Okay, so we have durations, we have timings of the music that tell us like, hey, what we are doing today is just like it was 200 years ago. Can you give me some timings then? Really? I've made a lot of videos about that. Maybe not a lot, but some videos about it. But I mentioned it like recently. These timings, they do not give us much clue about how music was played, supposed to be played. What it does, the data that are reliable, and there are not so many, because we don't have double checks. We don't know if the timings are correct. We don't know if the entire piece was played. And they didn't leave out movements only, Dave. They also cut into the movements. Even Beethoven's student did that. Like Ries, when he played the Ninth Symphony, was writing to the composer, to Beethoven, hey, your adagio, we had to cut like this and this and this and this because it was too difficult to play for the musicians with basically no preparation. So to say that, hey, we know the timings there, we know the timings of these pieces, we don't. You know what we have? We have also timings of whole beat durations, and so nobody's talking about that. How does that sound? So by the token of your reasoning, you should say like it can go both ways, right? But the majority of the data that are more or less that you can say, okay, maybe they're reliable, point to like a middle ground. And why is that? Why is that? Why is it that these performances were faster than whole beat and slower than single beat? Because they didn't care about how music was played in the past. And then the second argument, which is really funny if you say that, there is no evidence to support the idea that what we hear today, that actually the tradition was not like kept. I mean, the orchestras today, we still play in the same way as 200 years ago. I mean, the idea that it changed, I mean, how crazy. These people are from another planet if you think that. What Beethoven did with his orchestra, we do it still the same with Von Karajan, right? I mean, just imagine that you would be in front of an unbiased audience and you would say that like, yeah, well, you know for sure that like what we did 200 years ago, our people played in the orchestra, it's exactly the same because we kept the tradition. Yeah, we still ride with horses and we still have post coaches instead of cars, right? We still write letters while we could take our phone, right? I mean, everything changed. And of course, this not. But the matter of fact is that we have so much evidence that points to the opposite. So I'm not going to focus on these durations. We'll do that enough. There is a video, 1808 concert. Search for that and click on that. I worked 2 weeks on that script. So there is everything you need. Everything. The 1808 concert, for those of you who don't know, is Beethoven premiering his 5th and 6th symphony with some other works. Well, if you do the math, the concert would need another 5th and 6th symphony to fill the 4 hours if single beat really was something that Beethoven had in mind. And it fits perfectly into a whole beat calculation. But anyways, let's just give Dave a little bit of information about sources that actually say that music was sped up drastically. We have here, and I'm not going to read the entire quotes. You will have to get the book, and I've made some videos about these quotes already, but in the book, of course, everything will be mentioned, and you will have the sources. Wim is leaving out. It's like nitpicking the sources, and I like whatever suits to him. Well, there you have everything, and then you can read it for yourself. Here's Mr. Kiesewetter, who came from Germany or Vienna, I think, to play some Beethoven and Haydn. What the author of the quarterly musical magazine in English magazine, London Magazine, in 1821, heard him play and said like, okay, Mr. Kiesewetter, in leading Beethoven's and Haydn's symphonies at the Philharmonic concert, we understand, insisted strongly upon their being played slower than the orchestra had been accustomed to perform them. And we have heard very old and very able musicians mention that the rage for rapidity is of late become so great as sometimes to perplex even first-rate violinists if they happen not to be thoroughly acquainted with the passage. So that means, Dave, that already in 1821 there was heavily criticisms from Vienna by Mr. Kiesewetter for the London Symphonic Orchestra already had accustomed to play much faster. So there already goes your tradition from Beethoven. 1839 is in German, of course, in the book you will have it. In English, Mr. Fink, Berliner Allgemeine Musikalische Zeitung. He wrote pieces, Dave, that actually Beethoven admired in his late days. So it's not Mr. Nobody. 1839, he wrote an article über das Bedürfnis, Mozarts Hauptwerke unserer Zeit so metronomisiert zu liefern, wie der Meister selbst sie ausführen ließ. And then he goes on saying that what people do in 1839 is like murdering Mozart's music because of the speed. Even Beethoven, he writes here at the end, haben es doch etliches schon gewagt, Schlusssätze von Beethoven mit toll übertriebener Abjagen zu verbuschen. Oder dass solche Kindereien gebührend gerügt würden. So last movements of Beethoven's sonata, people are just like, it's childish behavior to play it that fast. So tradition, there you go, 1839. Fink in this article says to the conductors, you should know what you're doing because you're raising a new generation of listeners that lose the remembrance of how it was in the days. It's not about romanticizing music, slowing down. No, They were comparing what they heard in their time to how it was or originally was done. So already in 1839, Dave, your tradition has gone. And Fink is warning to musicians, like, if you continue doing that, nobody will remember how it was played in the days. Well, that happened. Here, from our book premiere for you guys. It's not the final manuscript, but that's a quote by Bischoff, 1857. He says, we'll begin, he's complaining about the speeding up of tempi, also in the connection to the original. But here it's very, very cool. We begin with the Fifth Symphony in C minor. He writes in the first movement, the capital musical mistake is generally made, which unfortunately has almost become predominant. Fink warned the world for that. It became dominant, exaggerating the tempo. Well, good luck if you see the metronome mark of this symphony and you exaggerate the tempo. I mean, these guys are not talking about 5%, they are talking about a lot. For us, it is incomprehensible that the tempo of this movement is now so frequently misjudged, as its entire contents are just expressed in such a way as to include nothing else but excessive speed. And then he says here about the symphony here. These three notes, we all know them, right? And Dave, if you cannot read music, that's the beginning of the Fifth Symphony. These 8 notes must be performed energetically in such a way that the third has the same strength as the first and the second, which is then only possible if the string players, through an appropriate tempo, are given time to lift the bow slightly between the G and the E flat. Lift the bow here after the 8 notes. I mean, really? Here you have Benjamin Zander. Just think about if he can lift the bow after these 8 notes. I don't think so, right? Here we have Bandcamp. By the way, you can go on our Bandcamp site and you can listen 3 times for free. I've said it a lot, but I mean, just do it and just listen 3 times because you will be converted into this tempo easily. Here, our version. Makes sense, right? In addition, the use of tempo, which is commonly taken these days, as Bischoff says, turns the 8 notes into triplets. And then I quote, these 8 notes throughout the whole movement get a slovenly execution, which besides scurrying over the last 8th note, gives a somewhat triplet-like character to the figure. This completely blurs the character of the figure. How many times do you read that today, where people say like, hey, but there are 8 notes, or actually you're triplets. It's still the same. Here, last quote, Saint-Saëns. About Mozart. Life was more tranquil in the 18th century. And he says like here, this tendency often reveals itself in the too rapid rendering of the old masters. This is Saint-Saëns, Dave. Much to their detriment. With Mozart, the inclination to hurry, which is much too common, must be avoided. Mozart's presto corresponds with our allegro. I know you can say like Saint-Saëns didn't live long enough. I wasn't there when Mozart. No, he lived in the 19th century. This tendency of speeding up that was so apparent, and many of these sources connect that to the metronome marks. I mean, the problem gets really, really, really bizarre, right? We struggle in many cases, and in many cases, we cannot even reach those metronome marks in single beat. And yet we have comments in the 19th century of people saying like, hey, but guys, you play much faster. There's only one way in which you can explain that. That's by accepting the whole beat concept as a theory, as a practice actually for reading the metronome. And Dave, talking to you right now, but actually talking to my entire audience, it doesn't matter if you like modern performances, if you like Herbert von Karajan's symphonies by Beethoven, it's not a problem. The only thing that is so annoying is that you have influencers like him. He has 53,000 subscribers on YouTube. I mean, that gives you certain authority that you feel the need from a total ignorance and with an arrogant tone. Can I say that? To just go and mock like me, Cobra, and I'm not the advocate for Cobra. He can stand up for himself if he wants to. But to say to me like I'm from another planet and these guys are just like whatever, not worth paying attention. Why you don't have an argument and everything points in that direction. But if you don't like the recordings, don't mix that up with finding out how Beethoven had the music in his mind, how Chopin had the music in his mind. When you mix that up, for your audience, what you do is you build a wall between them and figuring out how Beethoven was played, because there is no other way. And I'm not saying that we played like Beethoven, but what I do say is when you listen to this performance, I'm 100% convinced that was the most important metric is, namely, the reconstruction of tempo, or the tempo that you take. Changing the tempo changes everything. It changes the character in the first place of the piece. I'm 100% convinced that there is no other way, no other starting point than this. And from there, you go your own way. And if you don't like it, that's fine. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. But don't go online and say stupid things that are not correct, that by chance your audience just might believe. That's very annoying, and that should not be done. That's not correct. And by the way, it's not civilized to call names like that. Anyways, that was it for today. Thank you for watching. Thank you Thank you also to my patrons. They make this possible to record these videos and to do the research. If there's something for you, check it out. We have podcasts there. We have recordings. We have updates. You are close to the project, and if you join the club, and we have hangouts even. Dave, become a patron, and we can talk on our hangout, and then we become good friends again. There's enough trouble in this world that we are going to, behave like that. And I'm sorry if I raise my voice, but I mean, you're talking to me, huh? I mean, I don't think I deserve these name callings, and especially not in a context that's not correct. Okay, guys, thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments if you still are here. I appreciate that as always. That was all I've got for you today. I have to run now because we have a database meeting. We're working on that. It's almost finished in 3 minutes. Thank you for watching. See you soon again. Bye.